on. The director. Dun, dun, dun. All right. So directing. Directing is an art whose product is the most ambiguous. Rita, what does ambiguous mean? Kimberly, what does ambiguous mean? Okay, that's actually kind of on the right track. So it's ambiguous means you can't put a finger on it. Remember, it's like that's what they do. No, that's what they do. No, that's what they do. Acting, a designer. You all had something to hold, right? You can see that. But when you say, oh, they directed the play, like, well, where do I see what the director did? Where is there evidence of directing? So it's kind of slippery, in other words. It's not visible, it can't be heard, it can't be sensed. So what do? And technically, the director organizes the production, right? So the director has a casting call, hires all the actors, hires the stage managers, organizes. Even if they're given people to work with, they still organize it. And they're like, okay, you're doing the costumes, this is what I need. You're doing the set, this is what I need. Okay, the actors, this is the rehearsal schedule that I need them to follow. The set needs to be done by this time. We're going to have our dress rehearsal on this day. We're going to have our technical rehearsal on this day. So they have to do all those technical things of organization. Artistically, they conceptualize, right? The production, they inspire the collaborators. They say, I want to do Hamlet set in the future. So I want it to take place on Mars, and and Hamlet has gone home to Earth to go to college, but he's coming back to Mars. And the people from Neptune are the ones that are going to come. They're Fortinbras. Yeah. Okay, so I give, as a director, I give that concept. That's actually kind of cool. I give that concept to my designers and my actors. And I let them know, remember, we're all in space. We're all in the future. So you have to share that artistic design with everybody so that everybody makes it cohesive. For directing, the directors organize the production. They do all the scheduling. They supervise the acting. Right? They tell the actor, no, don't do that. I walked into the end of rehearsal yesterday because I have a 6 o'clock class, and they were finishing up, and it's a week before the show, so they've got a lot of notes. Like, no, when you come down those steps, remember, you need to come faster, otherwise the other person can't get behind you. So they supervise the actors, and no, I need to have a bigger facial expression when you say that, stuff like that. They supervise the designing. Like I said, they tell the designer what they want. The designer shows them a picture. Then they put it up on stage, and they're like, you know what? That's not going to work there. We need to help change that. So you have to talk with your designers and make sure that they're doing the right things. Supervise the staging and supervise all the technical operations. So the lights, no, lights now. Not that I've directed before. Okay. So the history. How did directors start? Well, back in the ancient Greek times, they called him, see if I can say this right, didaskalos. And didaskalos actually means teacher. So remember, not everybody, I mean, the Greeks were pretty learned people, but not everybody could read and write at the same level. But maybe some of them could act. So the playwrights actually, they would write the play and then they would teach the play to the actors, to their flute player, or whatever. The director would actually teach it to them so that they would learn it. So that's where the word director actually, comes from, is didaskalos, so a director is more like a teacher. But for a long time, there weren't really, other than the Greek and other than telling people who didn't know how to read, there weren't really the directors like we think of directors today. So the pinnacle of directing influence happened in the 18th and 19th century. So the 18th century is what years? 1700s. The 19th century is 1800s. I have to think about that every time. So the 1700s and 1800s, we talked a little bit about this. We're going to talk about it in one of the other sections. Something came in called realism. They wanted things to look real, like they really, really happened at that time. Audience required, they wanted detailed historical accuracy. So they were going to do an ancient Greek play. They were going to do Oedipus Rex. They wanted the clothing, the shoes, everything that they did to look the same way that it did then. So they needed somebody to research. Back then, research meant going to the library and looking through a lot of books, right? Okay. So there was one guy that did all the research and then came back and told everybody else that was doing the show about it. That person ended up being the director because they wanted it just right. And the director could stand back and could look at things, okay? And could work with the costumers and could work with the designers and could work with the actors. That's when it all happened. This guy, this is important to know. His name is George II, the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen. Okay, that's what you're going to need to remember. The Duke, that's what I remember now, the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen. My name is George, and I should probably remember that. Okay, I want to say he was in Germany, area, one of those areas. Okay, probably part of Germany. So the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen, he had a group of actors, and he started working with them and demanding perfection. Okay, so what are we talking about? We got 10 minutes, right? We got 15 minutes. All right, we're good. So he was demanding perfection. He would not let a play open like, oh, we're going to open next Thursday. No, if he didn't think his actors were ready, he's like, nope, cancel that. We're not going to perform. We're not going to perform until everybody's ready. And he really stressed ensemble working. An ensemble means everybody in the cast is important and everybody works together. So I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, there are no small parts, only small actors, right? Because everybody matters. And no matter what, if you just have one line, you need to take that line and be serious with it. Okay, I got a joke for you. Got to digress here. My dad told me this long time. There was a guy, and he was basically a spear holder, okay? And his line was, hark, hear the cannon roar. He took it really seriously, and he practiced it. He'd be in the shower, hark, hear the cannon roar, hark, hear the cannon roar. Driving down the road, hark, hear the cannon roar, hark, hear the cannon roar. Okay, so he practiced his line over and over and over again. And he gets there opening night, and a cannon goes off, boom! And he goes, what the hell was that? Thank you for laughing. So the totality of a Meiningen aesthetic spread throughout Europe. So his shows were so great that he toured them, and he was famous. So the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen and his group was famous all throughout Europe of doing outstanding shows. They were absolutely phenomenal, and everybody wanted to come see them. So this was around the 1870s and 1880s. Well, you know, one person does something, it doesn't take long before somebody sees someone's success and tries to do it as well, right? Try to copy it. So enter Andrew Antoine. He created the Theatre Libre in France in 1887. You see that I kind of doing? Okay, and he really stressed realism in theater. He wanted it to be even more real than the Duke of Saxe-Meiningen did it. So he was also well known. Once you set something in motion, remember there's somebody that wants to, once you set up the rules, there's somebody that wants to break the rules, right? So once realism became really, you know, like everybody was doing realism, then there comes this guy, Paul Fort. Oh, wait, Paul's the next one. Wait, we're gonna skip this guy. Ah, where'd Paul Fort go? this guy named Paul Fort. Okay, and I was like, I swear he was on this thing. Paul Fort actually started doing things that were symbolism and absurdism and all that kind of stuff, kind of the opposite of Andrew Antoine. In France, really across the street from his theater. So there's that. His name will come up, I know. Maybe. That's true. Okay, yeah, these are realistic directors. You're right. Okay, so Konstantin Stanislavski, where have we heard that name before? The method acting, right? The internal acting. Konstantin Stanislavski, he worked at the Moscow Art Theater, and he was, he's famous for helping to create the method acting, but he was also a great director. He mostly directed plays written by Anton Chekhov, so there's that. So he really kind of worked with one playwright. They were realistic kinds of plays, which is why the method acting worked for what they did. But he is also like a really big part of what we now call directors. Okay, once the psychology of humans became crucial to play production, the director's creative function increased. So now we want to know, well, if we're doing realism, what's exciting about that? Being inside people's minds, right? We want to know what they're doing. Why are they doing what they're doing? And so you had to think about psychology and think about all those things. At this time, this is the time where Sigmund Freud, came out, started, and Charles Darwin, Darwinism. So all of these really, important psychological things were being discovered at the time. And once that became part of theater, the directors needed to stand back and help the actors bring those things out. When it was just all kind of melodrama, we didn't need the directors so much except for to tell people how not to bump into each other. But but once we had to start really getting into the psychology of people, that's when the directors got to do more. All right, stylizing directors. So again, right after realism took hold, then the new directors joined. You're right, with the non-realistic playwrights. So Paul Fort, Theater d'Art, 1890. So Andrew Antoine was 1887. So 3 years later, Paul Fort comes right across the way and says, no, we're going to do this kind of theater. So trying to pull the audience in different directions. So he's an important guy. This Volod Meyerhold. I think maybe we've seen his name before. He was a disciple of Stanislavski. He worked with him. He knew the method and he used it. And then he decided, nah, let's work from the outside in instead of the inside out. And he created this thing called biomechanical constructivism, which sounds really, heady and stuff, but it's basically he developed these movements that actors would do, like slash, whip, punch, or whatever, I don't know, lunge. There are all these things, and he'd have his actors do them over and over and over again until these movements created the character that they were becoming. So this is from the outside in. It was the opposite in acting technique, but he was also a director. So, and he was directing opposite what Stanislavski was doing. And then Gordon Craig, he wrote, until discipline is understood in a theater to be a willing and reliant obedience to the manager or captain, no supreme achievement can be accomplished. Basically what that says is, if you don't listen to the person in charge, nothing good's gonna go right? You don't listen to the captain of a ship, yeah, we end up shipwrecked. So he's saying that you needed discipline in theater, and until people followed one person and listened to what they said, whatever it was that they said, then that person's vision could be shown. But otherwise, it wasn't going to show, right? It was not going to be successful. That was Mr. Craig's fault. Okay, the directors of today. So directorial function is fully established as an art of synthesizing the script, the design, and the performance into a unique theatrical event. So we talked about how you go to a show one night and you go to a show another night and they're different. But even further, if you've ever seen a play, who here has never seen a play? Never ever. Okay. Okay. What play have you seen? Okay. Okay, the Nutcracker. That's actually a ballet. Okay, but so now that you've seen the Nutcracker, you think that you could, if you went back to see it again, it would be exactly the same? No. So anyone here seen the same play by two different entities putting it on? Yeah? What have you seen? Midsummer Night's Dream?
Yeah, I saw it at 2 different.
And at a theater?
Yeah.
And then you're gonna see it here next year? Yeah. Okay, so what was the difference?
The way that they like had
The set?
Yeah, the set was different. And for one of the plays, out to me, like
Just really good.
yeah, literally still imprinted in my mind. And
But in the other two plays,
they were good. Like they were bad actors, but like she was just
So
took it to a whole
so
other
a
level.
different actor can make the play different.
Yeah.
Just a different actor. What plays do you see the same? Friends? You saw two different?
One of them was, the show is a very fun, bright, but also very sad story.
Right.
So like several people died.
Yeah.
And in the first one, it was
Spoiler.
sorry. In the first one, it's a lot more slow. It was more like a slow burn, and it felt more like mourning. And it was more sad, and it was like more like realistic and dark. But the second one was a lot more colorful, and it was a lot more fast paced. And so when the characters died, you didn't really have, well, you kind of had like the chance to like mourn, like, oh, that's sad. Okay, on to the next thing.
Wow.
So
which one did you like better?
To be honest, I like the writing because when they doted on their death so much, it took away from the idea that everybody else was already like still alive and they have their own thing. So it felt more like they died. That's the rest of the show. They died and everyone's focusing on that. When in reality, everybody else is fighting at their funeral. So like they have all their own stuff to do as well.
Yeah.
It made more sense like that.
I was gonna say, I think when I saw it, it all seemed kind of gloomy and dark. I only saw it once, but yeah. So two different directors, two different shows. They can be two different shows. And like I said, even one actor can change it. So it's a unique event anytime you go see a different director direct a show, not just different actors, but different directors too. And it's shifted from teaching what's proper, because remember, we wanted directors because we wanted historical accuracy. We wanted it to be absolutely right. It had to be exactly this. And now good directors don't teach you that's right and that's wrong. We work with choices, you know. What choice do you want to make? So now we want to make it stimulating, wondrous, exciting. We want you to come back to the theater. We want you to enjoy it. Okay. At the beginning of the production, the director faces a blank canvas, but at his hand, he has a generous palette. What does that mean? Palette. So he has a blank canvas, but he has a generous palette. You know what a palette is? No, I was gonna say that's one definition of a palette. A palette is the thing that the artist holds while they paint. It's the round thing that they put all the different colors on. Okay, so what it means is like they have a blank canvas, but they have a whole lot to work with, right? So it's like I can do anything I want with this play. They've got a lot to work with the different designers and the different technicians and the different actors. kind of never know what you're gonna get, but you could make it, like I said, we could set Hamlet on Mars. Yes, exactly, in a lot of different colors at your disposal, yes. Okay, we're gonna stop there, and when we come back, we're gonna do directors and producers. All right, we were here, directors and producers. We talked about he who paid the piper calls the tune, right? We talk about that? I can't remember. You guys are. Okay. Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. Move you guys so I can get to this thing. All right. So the modern director, we talked about how directors before were just, you know, in the old Greek times, they were called pistolos, whatever that means, teacher. So they had to teach everybody all the words and the songs and everything else. And then they needed around the 17 and 1800s, they wanted people to be historically accurate, right? We're going to do a Greek play. It needs to look like Greece. They need to be wearing the right thing. So we need somebody to go and research that. And so the person would research all those things so that they could make sure that it was historically accurate, and they would tell everybody what to do and how to stand in the circle like the old Greeks and all that kind of stuff. But now, since realism came about, we wanted things to look even more real, and then we go to the absurd, but we still need somebody to steer everyone, right? We still need a captain of the ship to put all the pieces together, and that's what the director does. So it's shifted from teaching what is proper, because it used to be, oh, you have to do that, you have to do that, you have to do that because we're trying to be accurate, to now creating what is stimulating and wondrous. And so we all hope that we see a stimulating and wondrous play next week when we go see the show. Okay, at the beginning of a production, the director faces a blank canvas but has a generous palette. Okay, a palette is what you put the paint on. Okay, so a blank canvas is meaning like they're an artist and they have all the colors in the world in here and things that they can do with a play and make the play anything. So I think I may have mentioned to you that they're going to do Midsummer Night's Dream in the spring, and she's going to set it in the 1980s. So that's going to be interesting. But you can do anything you want with Shakespeare. So, and there are some plays that you'll mess up the message if you try to, you know, move it around too much. But then some plays, I don't know if it was in this class or in the other class, somebody decided to do fences, and instead of having them be poor people, they decided that they were wealthy, very wealthy. And so all of the costumes were very, you know, various things like, I think the son was wearing like a polo and the dad was wearing a three-piece suit, and, you know, things like that. And they decided that the story could still be told, but using, you know, wealthy people instead of poor people. So really interesting, because I think it would have a real interesting effect on that play. You know, that there's this, you know, very well-to-do man trying to build a fence in front of his house or something like that. It's going to be really interesting. I think these people keep dropping and adding. Probably bad connection. Okay, directors and producers. Although directors are generally in charge of all aspects of a production, they must work with the producer. Producer is a person who pays for it. Okay, so I actually had a chair that was interim here before asked me when I was interviewing if I could do a show with zero budget. I don't know what kind of show you want, but I guess, you know, but we will still need costumes. The only way you can do a show with a zero budget is to have people donate. So then it's not really a zero budget. It's just getting other people to pay for it, right? What are we going to do with our sets? Who's going to, you know, how are we going to have people go through a door that's not there? You don't have a door, you know, you got to build a door. So there's always somebody that pays for it. And in our case, you know, it's the school, kind of. So a producer may be a person, they may be an individual, They could be an artistic director. For example, at the public, they have an artistic director, and that artistic director is the one that kind of runs whatever happens, what shows happen there. So they hire a director. They pay the director. And then when the actors come, they pay the actors, they pay the technicians, they pay everybody. So the artistic director is a producer in those situations. On Broadway, when people decide to do a show, they could be in any number of theaters. So a producer could decide to do a show and get a director and then find a location to do the show in. But the producer is the one that does all that and makes sure that everybody gets paid. Or that even if it's a non-for-profit theater, the producer is the one that gives the money to do it. Because you still need to buy stuff, right? You still need, even if it's props. A friend of mine was doing a show, church theater, and they needed like mugs, like drinking glass mugs. It's like, where am I going to find these? You know, I'm like, dollar store? I don't know. I mean, you know, so, I mean, there's stuff that you have to buy if you really, because everybody doing this kind of looks dumb. If you're doing Beauty and the Beast and you're going, no one sings like Gaston, no one, and waving your hand in the air, it's not so much of a drinking song. A producer could also be an entity, a partnership, especially on Broadway. There's usually like partners that get together and do things. It could even be a committee or a board of directors or a corporation. So when Disney does shows on Broadway, that is Disney putting up the money for the shows. So they have a person appointed, but basically they are the producers. He who pays the piper calls the tune. What does that mean? That's right. So if I ask you to come to my house and paint the wall, okay, and you start, I'm going to pay you. Kimberly, I'm going to pay you to come and paint the wall at my house. And I come in and you're painting it in circles. No. I don't want you to paint it in circles. That's going to leave swirls on my wall. I want you to do it up and down. If I'm paying you, what are you going to do? And do it up and down. Right. I'll say, you're going to do it the way that the person paying you tells you to do it because they're paying you. So with a producer, especially on Broadway, they get to heavily influence the person or the show. They have a very strong influence. They're not directing it, but they can say, there's a show, well, the show Hair. Hair was a musical. And when Hair appeared on Broadway in the 1970s, there were nude people on stage, okay? Did they have to be? No. Didn't really do the plot, you know, just, so they could have had their underwear on. So if I'm a producer and I don't want nudity in my show, and I hire you as a director, and you say, but it's intrinsic to the show. No, we're going to do it without the nudity because I have people that are going to come see the play and pay to see the play, and they don't want nudity. My audience doesn't want nudity, so I am saying, so then the producer would get their way. In regional or college theater or universities, the most common goal is to safeguard the long-term interest of the institution. So if I decided I was going to direct a show here and I wanted to direct Hair or Equus, which is also another one where there's nudity on stage, the Alamo colleges could say, oh, no, you're not. Oh, no, you're not. They need to keep it so that people want to still come to school here. And especially when you're dealing with prospective clients. So it's not necessarily the students who are here that might or might not get offended, but it's also the prospective students coming. So parents who have kids in high school are not going to want them to come and see the play that has nudity on stage or whatever. Yeah, some of them wouldn't, some of them wouldn't, but they are trying to make sure that everybody's happy. They'll let you do some controversial pieces as long as it doesn't offend the majority of the audience. We'll get into it. Sometimes it's there's a special director who likes to antagonize the audience. Like he would sell, 5 sets of tickets for the same seats. So that when the people arrived, they all said, no, that's my seat. No, that's my seat. right? Yeah, that's not nice. Or put glue on the seats so when people sat down, when they stood up again. Yeah, okay. We're not doing that kind of theater here. They need to safeguard the mission of the institution. So what do directors do? Their functions, they include setting goals, establishing priorities and procedures, facilitating communication, monitoring progress, building team morale, and inspiring excellence from everyone. So the director, right, they talk to the designers, they talk to the person building the set, they talk to the people backstage, they talk to the lighting people, they talk to, especially to the actors, right? And if people aren't feeling it, or they're just doing it to get by, it's not going to work for a director. A director needs people to do stuff. And they say, there's an old saying that you can't push a wet noodle. Think about that, Alex. What does it mean? You can't push a wet noodle. Specifically. What does that say? Right? But what happens when you push the noodle? It pushes up. Right? Right, and it doesn't really move forward. So saying you can't push a wet noodle means that you need to pull it along if you want it to go along. So if I cram something down your throat and say you must do this, and you go, no, not going to do that. Or if I say, you know what, you can do it. You have the skills, you have the capability. So if I'm talking to an actor and I'm telling you, I said you need to memorize your lines now. Okay, not that I've ever done it. But sometimes it's better to inspire greatness rather than. I think I don't know if I told this class, I worked at Laguna Beach for a while, and there was another theater that they had directors. This is for children's theater, mind you. Okay, children are performing. And whenever they'd forget a line, they'd throw a tennis ball at them. Yeah, I didn't really approve of their methods. And you know, people call me all the time because I used to have the Children's Academy, and ask me what I recommended. And I know that there's one in town where they are not nice to the children. You know, there's a lot of yelling going on and a lot of berating or saying, you know, anybody could memorize that. What's wrong with you? That's not how to inspire people. So directors have to take on the personality of dealing with the different people. There's a great play called Noises Off. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it or heard of it. And there's a character in there. You can find it. It's actually on video, and Michael Caine is the director. And the way he talks to the different people is really funny. Like there's this one like airhead guy, and he has to say, okay to me. So remember what we talked about? And then there's somebody else where he's going, okay, love, you know, listen, you need to do this way, please. So it needs to inspire excellence. You want your cast to be excellent. You want your, you know, everybody to be great. What did I miss? I just missed something in my slide. Okay, they establish a point of focus and motivate all the collaborators to move towards it. Okay, so that's kind of what a director does. The phase one, these are the phases that a director goes through. They select, if I am a director, I've been asked, will you direct a show here? I'm like, yeah. So first thing I do is select a play. Selection of the script is the most crucial decision, okay? Because if you select a bad script, you're gonna have a bad show, right? If you select a good script, you might still have a bad show, but you got a lot better shot. So it's really important that you choose a script that you like, that you can fall in love with if you're gonna be the director. There are 3 considerations. One is the director's interest. Okay, I gotta love the show. And if I don't like the show, if I'm told here, you need to direct this, and I don't like it, I'm not going to do a good job, and I'm not going to inspire anybody else to. You also have to think, is your audience going to go see it? So you pick a script that, is the audience going to like this? Is it going to attract audiences because it's by a famous person? Or, you know, or it's another famous show. If
I'm trying to think of a famous show on Broadway or something like that. If we decided to do so, and Tony in high school last year, they did Frozen, the musical. It's name recognition, right? And their goal was to get a lot of kids in, to pay to see the show. So that works. They did The Little Mermaid the year before. They did Grease. So the interest of the audience, and also your capability to produce a play. So there are some plays that require a lot of people and a lot of sets. The play, I mentioned to you guys this one towards the beginning. It's called The Play That Goes Wrong, and the whole set falls apart. But it's a lot of gags and a lot of gimmicks. And I looked at the prop list, because I was thinking of doing that show here. And there were 150 props. Props are things that you hold in your hand. That's 150 times something could get lost. I try to have as few props as possible. So, and the set has to be built in such a way that it's safe, but it looks like it's falling apart around them. It literally falls flat on the ground, and the person's like standing in the doorway as it falls flat. So there's a lot of safety considerations too. So I decided then that we really didn't have the capability to produce that play right now because there just aren't enough people. I need safety officers. I need, lots of technicians to build the set and to make sure it was safe and stuff like that. So you have to make sure that you're interested in it, that the audience will be interested in it, and then you actually have the capability to do it. Okay, this is all the pre-preparation, but conceptualizing. A director comes up with a core concept, and they determine the most important ideas that should emerge from the play. So this is Romeo and Juliet, the musical. There's a core organizing principle. This needs to be the main idea of the whole show, that I can tell you this one thing and you'll say, okay. So if we decide we're doing Oedipus Rex and we decide that the core of the whole thing is that don't let your pride can ruin you, okay? By saying, no, I know better, and not listening to the people around you, that could ruin your life. Because if he had just left it alone, he would have never known, right? He would have never known he killed his father and married his mother. So I can say that pride is going to, so then that kind of influences even the costumes, even the set, even, how the actors act. So it's the highest priority idea. That's called the core organizing principle, your core concept. So you decide the core principle, that's a creative task. And a high concept introduces the unexpected insights into a character story or tell. Didn't you do high concept? For what show was it? I'm trying to remember. For Into the Woods, and your high concept was what? Okay, so you were looking at the symbolism of it. Okay, so that's kind of like an overarching thing that would, you did it with the set, right? With costumes. I do remember that you did a high concept, right? Okay, so the high concept for Midsummer Night's Dream is going to be 1980s. So that's doing something different or something new with a play that hasn't been done before. Making fences, with wealthy people instead of the garbage collector. Okay, but it's got to work for the whole play. If you have a core concept that doesn't work, that doesn't make any sense, or makes sense for one part of the play, but not for the rest of it, it's not going to work. Okay, that's phase one. So that the director picks out the script, decides the core concept, and gets the conceptual idea. Phase two is when they collaborate with the designers. Oh, we are writing an essay about this, aren't we? The designer-director collaboration. So directors tend to work with designers that they know and trust. Sometimes it's given to you. If I were to do a show here, we kind of have some people that are on staff that are doing it. But if I get hired by a theater and I can choose my own designers, I will. There are many times that directors and designers work together on many, many shows because they call up their people that they've worked with before and people that they know are going to do a good job. I know this one guy in California, his name was Robert. I can't remember his last name, but all of his sets were fantastic. And all the directors wanted to work with him because he was really good. Signed like Man of La Mancha with these great big stairs coming down and stuff. The first conference When they meet with any of the designers, they say, here's my core concept. They tell the designers, okay? And then when they meet afterwards, the designers bring ideas and the director says, yeah, I like that. No, I don't like that. No, can you change this? Oh, but remember, somebody has to come walking in here. How are we gonna handle that? So they go through all those things. And the director's job is either to accept or reject whatever a designer brings, right? They can say, yes, I love it, or no, let's change it, or no, I don't like it at all. Go back to the drawing board, literally. Okay, it's a shared responsibility, not a warring set of artists. So they kind of take credit for the design together. Oh, that's a great design. That's going to work with this play. Casting. Then the directors cast, right? 90% of directing is good casting. That is a saying in the directing circles. When I took my directing course at Arizona State, they said the 5 things you need are good actors, good actors, good actors, great stage manager, and some good designers. Good actors were the top 3. If you have a play and one of your actors sucks, especially in the lead role, the whole play, it taints the whole play. So they have to consider the actor's training and experience, the physical characteristics. Sometimes in casting the play that they're doing now, Rumors. Which I wrote up. Okay, so hands at 55, right? Yes. In casting Rumors, she had to look and see these are 4 couples, so they're supposed to be married. So she had to have them stand next to each other to see if it looked right. Does that mean that every couple in the world looks right that marry each other? No, but for the play to go through, I mean, for it to be believable, you don't want it to be distracting. So you don't want to get some little girl that's 4'11" and then get a really tall guy that's 6'5" if it's going to be distracting to the message of the play. That can happen in real life, actually. I know I dated a guy who was 6'5", his brother was 6'8" and married a woman who was 5 foot. It's like, so that does happen in real life, but it wouldn't look so good on stage, So you have to think, is this going to distract my audience from my message? And maybe the poor girl who was 4'11" didn't get the role, but you have to look at that and see if they're suitable for that style of the play, their vocal skill, their stage presence, their attitude, and directability. So if I tell you, please turn around, walk across the stage, and you go, okay, no, walk across the stage. Oh, okay, like, they can't listen to directions. Okay, next. Okay, next part is staging. That's the blocking, right? What's blocking? Blocking. I mean, what does the word blocking mean? No, not when you tell the people where to go on stage. They tell them in the script. That is, I want you to cross the stage and then you cross behind him and you come down the steps. That's called blocking. It's like moving little blocks around. You're moving the people around. So that's an important term. You need to know blocking in stage. So blocking is mapping out major entrances, exits, and movement patterns of the people. Some directors do it on paper and some just let the actors go and see where they end up. I write it on paper, see what the actors are doing, and then go, oh, okay, usually. If there are special scenes, if there are dances or violence, told you guys I was in Julius Caesar and they had to kill me and we had to choreograph it all. It wasn't a dance, but it was a fight sequence and it really needs to be done well. And business, which means that, okay, while I'm talking to you, I'm holding clothes or something like that. So all the little stage business, everything that an actor does there, that's called the stage business. All of these are terms that will be on your test, so please make sure that you take note of them. Okay, real quick. Then they coach the actors. I'm gonna get through this. There are passive directors and active directors, and some of them, they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And then some directors get up there and they're like, no, you have to move here and here and here. Pacing. how fast does the show move? In this show, it's a farce. It has to move really fast. So it's got to be bump, 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 or the jokes don't work. So sometimes they'll say, oh, the show is kind of slow. A director's in charge of that. So the actors need to be trained and they tend to go slow. So you have to kind of speed them up or slow them down as the is ready. And so they have to guide and control the tempo of the performance. And then their final job is that they coordinate everything. There are two terms here, technical rehearsal and dress rehearsal. And technical rehearsal is the first time everything happens at the same time. So the actors are there and they're using the lighting and they're using the sound and they're making sure that all of the actors can go from one thing to another and those spaces are lit. And if they're not, they have to stop rehearsal, adjust the lights, go back and make sure it all works. Technical rehearsals are hell. They take a whole day and into the night. Yeah. They are really long, technical rehearsals. And then your dress rehearsal, hopefully it's not as long, and it can be, when you add costumes to everything. Okay. And director usually leaves after opening night. So that's the thing too. Directors, once the show is done, they really don't have anything to do. So a lot of the directors, they watch opening night, and then they take off. And I remember being very hurt by that. I was like, why aren't you coming to the show? He's like, I'm done. So I'm a well-trained directors. And most directors go through a graduate school. You know, most directors on Broadway do have an MFA or an MA, and they really have a good imagination and they have a good working of theater literature. They've read a lot. In order to get an MA or an MFA, you have to have read a lot of plays. So there's that. And they also should know about the current theater technologies. Because remember all those cool things I told you that could happen on the stage? They need to know about those so they could incorporate. Okay. Ta-da. Is that it? Yeah. Yay. Ta-da. Yay.